Sag nit keinmal as du geist dem letzten Weg, wenn Himmeln bleierne versteten bläue Tag. Kummer wird noch unser ausgebänkter Schau, s Wetter beugt und unser Trott mir seinen Dog.
Wonderful, thank you. Wonderful, thank you. It's my pleasure. I'm a local councillor, Councillor Jean Lammerman, and I've been working with these wonderful people on Holocaust Memorial Day. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce His Worshipful, the Mayor of Harrow, Councillor Hasanfar Ali. Councillor.
Good evening, all. I welcome you all today that you have come here and watching at home, everybody. And it's 77 years ago, which great tragedy in the history of the world happened. We're here today to pay our tributes and to remember those who lost their lives. Over 6 million people were killed because of their no fault, because of their religion, race, and culture. This tragedy should never have happened. But we really, at that moment, no action was taken. And after that, many pledges were made that human rights will be protected in future. But again, later in 1995, we had again Srebrenica massacre, but another 10,000 innocent people were killed. At this moment, when I'm speaking here, there are so many violations of human rights all over the world. Everybody knows it's in Middle East, Asia, Africa. Our world powers have a duty to take actions. I'm not trying to be political. As a human being, we got a duty to protect all the humanity. In my religion, if I'm not a good human being, I'm not a good Muslim. So humanity comes first. Human rights are very important, from children to the elders. So my plea is to everybody, particularly the leadership of the world power, to take action to protect human rights everywhere in the part of the world where it's happening. No violation of human rights. And as a mayor of Harrow, I have been working on that we should all live in harmony and peace, tolerance, protect everybody's rights, and live in with each other in love, harmony, and what should I say? This tragic, what's happened 77 years ago, innocent children's, young and old, women were murdered by fascist and Nazi regime at that moment. And I pray that it should never happen again. And I plead to my world leaders, they should protect human rights at any cost. Thank you for coming today and joining us in this memorial service. God bless you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to the Mayor of Harrow and also to Councillor Jean Lammerman, a former mayor who introduced him. My name is Steve Levinson, and I will be presenting this evening's events to mark 2022 Holocaust Memorial Day. Before the Mayor's address, you were listening to the live cello performance by Ruth Collin and Archie Sana Howard. There'll be other musical contributions during the evening, as well as speakers recalling both the terror of the Nazi Holocaust and also with reminders that genocide and persecution are still with us today. Our theme today is One Day, which marks not only this specific day, but the hope that there will be one day when there is no more genocide and persecution of any group of people just because of who they are or what faith they choose to follow. I now welcome Rabbi Kathleen de Machtig Middleton of Mosaic Reform Synagogue in Stanmore, who will lead us in a multi-faith memorial candle lighting ceremony, followed by a minute's silence and some prayer. Thank you.
It is an established tradition to light 6 candles on Holocaust Memorial Day in memory of the 6 million men, women, and children that perished during this dark time in history. 1 candle for 1 million, a number hard to comprehend. Tonight, however, we will light 8 candles. We will invite 8 representatives of Harrow Interfaith to light a candle each on behalf of their own faith community. We invite them to light this candle for 2 reasons. In memory of those who died during the Holocaust and in subsequent genocides, and as a pledge that we will not allow such a destruction, such a Holocaust, to happen ever again. Ner Adonai Nishmat Adam, it says in Proverbs 20, verse 27. The human spirit is the light of God. As we look at these lights, imagine 6 million candles, each of which with a name, each a unique and precious soul.
I, Ervad Yazat Timuraz Bada, light this candle on behalf of the Zoroastrian faith and promise to work towards one day a future without genocide, racism, and hatred.
I, Gopaljeet Singh Bachu, light this candle on behalf of the Sikh faith and promise to work towards one day, a future without genocide, racism, and hatred.
I, Ghazanfar Ali, light this candle on behalf of the Muslim faith and promise to work towards one day, a future without genocide, racism, and hatred.
I, Kathleen de Machtige Middleton, light this candle on behalf of the Jewish faith and promise to work towards a day, one day, a future without genocide, racism, and hatred.
Thank you.
I, Dilip Chaubal, light this candle on behalf of the Hindu faith and promise to work towards one day a future without genocide, racism, and hatred.
I, Abraham Matthews, light this candle on behalf of the Christian faith and promise to work towards one day a future without genocide, racism, and hatred.
I, Dr. Aturupana, light this candle on behalf of the Buddhist faith and promise to work towards one day a future without genocide, racism, and hatred.
I, Farid Afnan, on behalf of the Baha'i faith, light this candle and promise to work towards one day a future without genocide, racism, and hatred.
We remember our 6 million dead who died when violence ruled the world and evil dwelt on earth. We mourn for all that died with them. The world has become a poorer place. They are like candles which shine out from the darkness of those days. And in their light, we know what goodness is and evil. We salute those who had the courage to stand up against evil. They are a source of hope when we despair. May such times never come again, and may their sacrifice not be in vain. In our daily fight against tyranny and persecution, their memory gives us strength and leads us on. We will have now a minute's silence before I will recite the Jewish memorial prayer in Hebrew and English. El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Amtze Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utehorim כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמות 6 מיליון אחינו ואחיותינו שמתו על קידוש השם. ינוחו בשלווה ובשלום שלא ידעו בחייהם. בעל הרחמים, אסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, Utzror bitzror achayim et nishmatam, Adonai hu nachalatam, V'yanuchu v'shalom amishkavam, V'nomar Amen. God full of compassion, whose presence is over us, may the souls of the 6 million dead who have gone to their everlasting home with the holy and pure on high, who shine as the lights of heaven, find the safety and rest denied them on earth beneath the shelter of your presence. Source of mercy, cover them in the shelter of your wings forever, and bind their souls into the gathering of life. It is God who is their heritage. May they be at peace in their place of rest. And let us say, Amen.
Well, thank you, Rabbi Kathleen, for that moving ceremony. And actually, I can remind you all at home that if you want to commemorate the Holocaust or genocide or persecution and the end of it all, you can also light a candle at home tonight and put it in your window, and the more candles out there, the better. Well, our next contribution is from Lord Finkelstein of Pinner. Daniel Finkelstein is a well-known figure in media and political circles, a resident of Harrow and also associate editor of the Times newspaper. Daniel's grandfather, Alfred, was a Holocaust survivor and founded the Wiener Library. His mother, Miriam, was a survivor of Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, and his father, Ludwig, survived exile in Siberia. So Daniel is with us tonight and willing and hopefully will share with us his thoughts on this Holocaust Memorial Day.
Thank you, Steve, and it's a privilege to be here tonight. It's a great shame, but it is a prudent idea that we're all meeting virtually, and I'm delighted to welcome so many of you online. In early 1945, 3 young girls boarded a Red Cross ship approaching Ellis Island, and they began an earnest conversation. The eldest of the 3 had in her hands her father's First World War medals. He had bravely fought as a German officer. The girls and their mother had kept these medals with them while imprisoned in Westerbork and Belsen in the vain hope that they would be of some use, that they would prove their loyalty. And of course, they had been almost useless. And now their mother was dead, starved to death, saving every scrap for her young children. And the girls wondered what best to do with the medals. Maybe the American authorities would see them and conclude the girls were spies. So they wrapped the medals in a handkerchief, opened a porthole, and threw them out. And there the medals sit today, deep in the water at the foot of the Statue of Liberty. I'm struck by the story for 2 reasons. The first is that the youngest of the 3 girls was my mother. It's the story of the last leg of her journey from Belsen to freedom. The second reason is that whenever I was told this tale, it came with a rather puzzling conclusion. My grandfather, I was informed, was upset about losing his medals. And as a child, I found this hard to understand. It's only now, fairly recently, as an adult, that I finally grasped it. My grandfather was proud of his service to the German nation, and he believed, above all other things, in the power of truth. He spent his life collecting evidence about the activities and crimes of the Nazis. It was evidence that helped convict the Nuremberg defendants and aided the prosecution of Eichmann. Disposing of his medals had offended against his belief that he was a German and his belief in the power of truth. so as an adult, I understand it. I'm proud, therefore, to address this meeting, for here today are collected in person and online the tribunes of truth. Here today are gathered those determined that the truth shall be heard, that the truth shall be understood, that the truth will never be forgotten. Together, by our presence tonight, we announce that the memory of the dead will inspire the living, and that the suffering of the victims was not in silence, for in us the victims have found their voice. The truth, we say, the truth will be our shield, the truth will be our guide, the truth and its defence will be our duty. The theme of Holocaust Memorial Day this year is one day. So let me tell you about one day. Let me tell you about the 20th of June 1943. Let me tell you about the day the rucksacks were used. My mother had just turned 10 that month and was living with her sisters, her mother and their home help Betty in an apartment in Amsterdam. All of them were already refugees and were about to be refugees once more. For they had known for months that one day the Germans would come for them. The rucksacks were already packed. And one day came on Sunday the 20th of June. The first warning came early in the morning, as early as 3:30 a.m. There were sounds in the street, muffled ones, but enough to wake up my grandmother Greta, enough to wake up my Auntie Ruth. The soft but unmistakable sound of footsteps, bootsteps actually, on the pavement. A car stopping, muted voices, then silence. Greta and Ruth went to the window and, seeing nothing untoward, tried to calm each other down. A half an hour went by, and the noises began again, a little louder now. And returning to the window, it was no longer possible to mistake what was going on. There were soldiers everywhere. A lull, and then in the distance, a broadcast of some kind, coming nearer, getting louder. Achtung, Achtung, all Jews need to get ready with their hand luggage. The Aryan population is not allowed to leave their homes. Police orders are to be obeyed. This message over and over again. Inside the apartment, Ruth woke her sisters and Betty, while Greta completed the packing, adding in the food they would take, filling the water bottles. My Aunt Eva, then almost 13, asked to bring a sketchbook with, along with colouring pencils. Ruth took a 1943 pocket diary she'd won in a magazine competition but hadn't used. Everyone got dressed in the 3 layers of clothing that had been left out for them. Eva recalled being panic-stricken and terribly afraid, but Ruth thought they were more dazed. And while relief wasn't quite the right word, there was a feeling that all the waiting and trepidation had come to an end, that this was it. My mother remembered eating a rather odd breakfast with, she said, all sorts of unusual things because we thought we might as well. The things one keeps for special occasions, one might as well eat them. The home help Betty later explained that for at least one of the delicacies, there was a different explanation. It was her 9th anniversary of working for the Wiener family as a home help, and she'd asked an Aryan woman to buy the household some strawberries as a treat so they could all celebrate. But Jews, you see, weren't allowed such things. They were prohibited from shopping in the markets that sold strawberries. Betty realised that along with all their other troubles, there might be further punishment if they were to be caught with the forbidden fruit. That is why, as the soldiers outside divided up their lists and split into pairs, and 2 of them made their jackbooted way up the stairs to the apartment, the Wieners were sitting at the breakfast table in 3 layers of clothes, eating strawberries. At the door, the soldiers read the list: Margarita Wiener, Ruth Wiener, Eva Wiener, Miriam Wiener, Betty Levine, and demanded to see everyone's papers. He asked Betty if she was an Aryan, but then saw the J stamped on her ID card. Greta tried showing Alfred's war medals, but the soldiers were unimpressed. They counted the family members: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They must close the windows, bring the front door key with them, and be downstairs in 10 minutes. At that tense moment, an air raid sounded. Betty asked if perhaps they ought all to wait until the air raid was over. To this, one of the soldiers responded by shouting, "Enough with your Jewish excuses, stop them, or I'll make you get a move on." Then the SS men left in order to go and harass the other Jewish tenants in the building. 10 minutes later, there they were, the family outside the apartment, ready to be taken away. Ruth found it odd just to shut the front door and leave behind everything they still possessed, not even being able to give it away. A small crowd of neighbours had gathered, and my mother spotted a young friend among them. And as the soldiers began to hurry them along, she had the presence of mind to tell her friend where her beautiful blue scooter was and tell her to take it. That was how their journey started, a journey that took my mother and my aunts to Westerbork and Belsen, a journey that took my grandmother to her death, but also a journey that took me here. For my mother did not just survive. She lived. She thrived. She built. Hitler did not mean the Jewish people to rise again, but we have risen again, and the survivors have played their full part. So here's to the brave who took all life could throw at them, but still stood tall. Here's to the strong who made lives for themselves and their people. Here's to the compassionate who hid Jews or took children into their homes and their lives. Here's to the generous who gave whatever they could to help. Here's to the leaders who didn't wait for someone else to act, but decided that acting was their responsibility. Here's to the survivors and to the righteous. Being here tonight is a duty gladly undertaken. When my mother was alive, she told her story, the story of her arrest, of her years in camp, of seeing family friends Margot and Anne Frank arrive in Belsen, of her miraculous liberation. She had a wonderful way of talking, a gentleness and a sense of proportion, and mischief too. When Ronald Reagan was involved in a controversy over visiting graves of SS officers, his advisors decided that he should also visit a concentration camp. I heard this on the radio and I went down to tell Mum. She was washing up. Mum, I said, President Reagan's going to Belsen. Without turning round, she replied, so what? I've been. Now her voice has fallen silent. I can't be the same, tell her stories as she did. I can't bear witness as only a survivor can. But I can do my best to say what happened and to encourage other children of survivors to do the same. And I can support museums and libraries and monuments and meetings that preserve the record and spread the word. So here I am. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of the truth, the generation of survivors is coming to an end. But we, each one of us, will rise to our duty. For when they've gone, we will remain. When they're no more, we say their stories will never die. They have left us a sacred task, and we will prove ourselves its equal.
Well, thank you very much, Lord Finkelstein, for that very thought-provoking contribution. It should not be forgotten, however, that other groups of people, among them homosexuals, the physically disabled and the mentally ill, who did not meet the Nazi ideal of the perfect Aryan race, were also murdered in the Holocaust. We've remembered them in previous years, listening to the music of more than just a choir, which brings together in song people affected by mental illness. This year, choir practice has been virtually decimated by COVID restrictions, but nevertheless, David Phillips, and who is the director of the choir, and Judith Silver, who will be accompanying him on the guitar, are here on stage to represent the whole group. Over to you.
Just getting ourselves organised. We'll just be a second.
My name is David Phillips, and singing and playing with me tonight is Judith Silver. We're going to do a couple of songs now. I'm going to start off with a song from Judith in Yiddish, which is the language of the Eastern European Jews.
And following perfectly on from what's just been said, as well as the stories that get shared, the songs are one of the most vital ways in which we can keep our memories and culture going. So I wanted to share tonight a piece that's very close to my heart. It's called Unser Nigendl, which means our little tune. And the song tells us how this tune gets passed from generation to generation. If you have the program, you'll be able to see the beautiful Yiddish letters as well as the English text and the translation. But you'll hear the words Mama and Tate, mother and father. You'll hear Bobbe and Zayda, grandfather and grandmother. And you'll hear die ganze Mishpoche, the whole family, everyone singing this beautiful tune. There's a few of us here in the room, and if you feel you can start joining with me on the chorus, I'll be inviting you in. And at home, you're welcome as well. Maybe you'll even be able to sing out more strongly. So here we go. Haben wir Nigendl in Naches und in Frieden, in Naches und in Frieden. Singen wir es, klingt es also schön. Das hat noch gesungen, die Bobbe mit den Seiden. Wenn sie seinen Kindern noch gewähnt, oi, 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 oi. Azoi, je wieder nicken klingt hat's in der Azafrei, loch singt je Kinderot. Azoi, je wieder nicken klingt hat's in der Azafrei, loch mir alle gehen. Haben wir ein Nigendl, singen wir zusammen, singen wir zusammen, singen wir es, klingt es also schön. Das hat noch gesungen der Tate mit der Mammen, wenn sie seinen Kindern noch gewähnt, oi, 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 oi. Azoi, je wieder nicken klingt hat's in der Azafrei, loch singt je Kinderot. Azoi, je wieder nicken klingt hat's in der Azafrei, loch mir alle gehen. Haben wir ein Nigendl in Masel und in Broche, in Masel und in Broche. Singen wir es, klingt es also schön. Das hat noch gesungen die ganze Mischpoche, wenn sie seinen Kindern noch gewähnt. Oi, 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 oi. Azoi, je wieder nicken klingt hat's in der Azafreiler singt je Kinderot. Azoi, je wieder nicken klingt hat's in der Azafreiler, lass mir alle gehen.
The next song we're going to sing together, this is called L'Chilala Kizaria, which is a walk to Caesarea, also known as Eli, Eli, which means my God, my God. And it's written by Hannah Senesh, who was a young Hungarian Jewish poet. And during World War II, she fought in the Jewish paratroop regiment of the British Army. And she was parachuted behind enemy lines, was caught, put on trial and executed. And she left a legacy of some beautiful poems, of which this is by far the most well-known and a very beautiful song to sing and to listen to. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer le'olam.
Shall Amayim Beram
שלא ייגמר לעולם. החול והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. החול והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם.
Thank you very much, David and Judith, who we will hear again from in a short while. It would be nice to think that genocide and persecution of minority groups have been consigned to history, but we all know that that is not the case. As we remember the Holocaust today, the Uyghur people and other Muslim communities are being targeted and brutalized by the Chinese regime. Stop Uyghur Genocide is a UK-based human rights group campaigning in support of the Uyghur people. Here on stage now, we're delighted to welcome the executive director and co-founder of the organization, Rahima Mahmood.
Thank you for that kind introduction. It is an honor to speak to you on Holocaust Memorial Day, a day of mourning and reflection, but also of holding the world to its promise that never again should a community face the devastating crime of genocide. Today we commemorate the 6 million Jewish lives lost during the Holocaust. We listen to the stories of victims and remind ourselves that each of those lost lives carries its own story of mothers, brothers, parents, friends, and children, of grief and unrealized potential. Jewish communities have also used this day to educate and speak out against other historical and ongoing atrocities. I believe this is born out of their commitment to building a world in which what happened to Jewish people during the Holocaust, and indeed what they have faced throughout history, should not happen to any community ever again. As an Uyghur, I have felt the commitment through the support and the solidarity I have gained from Jewish people, organizations, faith leaders, and friends. I am grateful that today space has again been made for Uyghur voices. The Uyghurs are a Turkic majority Muslim people, native to an area many of us call East Turkestan, but which the Chinese government calls Xinjiang, meaning new frontier. We are ethnically and culturally distinct from the Han majority in mainland China, and this difference has long been treated by the Chinese government as a threat. Our rights and freedoms have been violated for a long time, but especially since 1949. Throughout my life, I was denied access to the same opportunities as my Han peers. Our language has been eroded over decades, and our culture and religious rights were under attack even when I was growing up. On July 5th, 1997, a date which we commemorate each year, military forces were used against peaceful protesters in my hometown of Gulja, killing hundreds and arresting thousands. This event made me realize that it was no longer safe for me and my son. I left my homeland soon after, in 2000. But life for my fellow Uyghurs back home has deteriorated rapidly since I left. In 2009, the Urumqi massacre took place. During this event, the Chinese government used violent clashes between police and protesters to justify an extended, brutal crackdown on the Uyghurs. Following the protest, the government gave the green light for extrajudicial arrests and killings. Men and boys were publicly beaten, and others were rounded up into buses, driven away, and never seen again. Even 13 years later, there are mothers still looking for children that disappeared at that time. The Urumqi massacre proved to be an early warning sign of what was to come for my people and signaled a dramatic gear shift in the way we were treated by the regime. The building persecution, violence, and repression, coupled with relative silence from the international community, has led to where we are today. And since 2017, my people have been facing genocide. There is now widespread and extreme cultural and religious repression across the region. Uyghurs fear imprisonment for the most basic forms of expression, including praying, men growing long beards, or owning a Quran. Our sacred cultural practices have been banned, our religious sites bulldozed, and our language censored. The region itself has been turned into an open-air prison, covered by a network of high-tech surveillance equipment and checkpoints. State-mandated policies have been cadres moved into the homes of Uyghurs, with many women forced to share their beds with the male officials. Children have been taken from their homes and placed in state-run orphanages, where they are indoctrinated. The Chinese government is attempting to biologically and socially engineer away future generations through forced inter-ethnic marriages, mass sterilization, and abortions. These policies are designed to deliberately reduce the Uyghur population, even though we make up less than 2% of the total Chinese population. It is on this point that the Independent Uyghur Tribunal found the Chinese government guilty of perpetrating genocide against my people. But it is the concentration camps constructed throughout the region to hold millions of fellow Uyghurs that sent shockwaves around the world. You may have seen the satellite pictures of the huge, sprawling camps or the drone footage of Uyghur men bound and blindfolded, heads shaved, lined up, and being led into trains. The echoes of past atrocities were deafening in those images. We estimate that 1 to 3 million Uyghurs have now been detained in these camps. I have translated the testimonies of many men and women that survived these places. They spoke of food and sleep deprivation, routine torture, and systematic rape. There have been numerous credible reports of organ harvesting. I know that these testimonies can be uncomfortable to hear, but it is important that the world bears witness to what is done to us. As is the case with every genocide, what we are facing is an existential, almost unthinkable threat, and yet its reverberations are deeply personal to every Uyghur. We each have our own story, our own grief, and our own struggle. I have myself been unable to speak to my own family for 5 years. I used to regularly call my siblings. Then in late 2016, they stopped answering the call. After incessantly calling my brother, he finally picked up 2 months later, and when I asked why no one had responded, he replied, "They did the right thing. We are fine, please leave us in God's hands, and we will leave you in God's hands too." I have not spoken to my family members since that day. Even now, I still do not know if they are safe or detained in concentration camps. Throughout this struggle, the Jewish community have been a constant presence. Jewish activists and survivors have spoken up for my people with a uniquely powerful voice. Others too, those that experienced the atrocities that took place in Rwanda and Bosnia. Faith leaders and parliamentarians from across the spectrum have demanded more action. But time and time again, these calls have fallen on deaf ears. Corporations continue to turn profit from Uyghur forced labor. Governments around the world continue to fail to act. Signatories of the Genocide Convention continue to dodge their obligations under international law. Far too many world leaders remain silent or gesture to international courts they know will not act. Today, our Prime Minister has repeated calls for never again, yet his government still has not even acknowledged that the Uyghur people are facing genocide or taking meaningful actions to protect us. My people are exhausted and we are traumatized, both by the Chinese government's campaign of terror and by the international community's indifference. We desperately need action. After I spoke to the chief rabbi last year, he wrote an article in which he said that every one of us shares in the responsibility to act on the Uyghur crisis. Today, I echo his words. You can take actions to help my people, and therefore you should. So please follow our movement. Join us on rallies. Write to your elected representatives and ask them to show up and support our parliamentary campaigns. And become conscious consumers. Talk to your friends and family about what is happening to the Uyghurs. As the Chinese regime seeks to silence us, Uyghur voices and stories are our greatest weapon. Today, as we reflect on the horrors of the Holocaust, we are also reminded that Jewish communities have found a way to hold on to their identity throughout a history of repeated traumas. Their story is characterized by struggle, but also by fierce resilience and strength, even in the face of the gravest crimes history has seen. So today, I stand with my Jewish brothers and sisters, and I thank them for all they have given the Uyghurs, their anger, their solidarity, and their hope. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Rahima, for that moving and very clear plea for support and help for her campaign. And also thank you for remembering the Rwandan and Bosnian genocides as well. We should not forget them either. In a moment, we will hear from Sonu Malkani, who is the chair of Harrow Interfaith. Harrow Interfaith has been actually very central to putting on this event tonight, and also very central in bringing together diverse communities throughout Harrow. But before Sonu addresses us, we have another opportunity to listen to David and Judith, who now will be putting together their version of a very well-known Jewish prayer for peace, peace for the whole world. So over to you, David and Judith.
Thank you very much. Just would like to say that I feel very privileged to be here tonight. And now I'm very sad that we couldn't be here with the whole choir, or more than just a choir, which is people who are affected by mental illness and other disabilities. I'm nevertheless delighted to be representing them tonight. And we'll carry on with the prayer. I say Shalom Bimromav. Oh, say Shalom Bimromav. Oh, say Shalom Aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kulam. Imaru, amen. Oh, say Shalom Bimromav. Oh, say Shalom Aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'Imaru, Imaru, amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kulam. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kulam. Oh, say Shalom Bimromav. Oh, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael, Ve'al kulam. Imaru, amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kulam. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kulam. Oh, say Shalom Bimromav. Oh, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael, Ve'al kulam.
Well, I'd like now to welcome Sonu from Harrow Interfaith. I've already introduced you, so it's all yours.
need the microphone. This is not on. Somebody switch it on. Hello. Good evening to all of you watching comfortably from home, as well as those taking part in tonight's event. My name is Sonu Malkani, and I'm privileged to be the chair of Harrow Interfaith since almost 3 years now. Harrow Holocaust Memorial Day has continued to be under the umbrella of Harrow Interfaith, whilst well supported by our local councillors. Like many organizations, fresh blood ensures strength and continuity. I sincerely appeal to all of you to seriously consider joining hands and becoming a member of Harrow Interfaith. Details and applications appear on our website. Harrow Interfaith is represented by 9 different faiths. Members meet with one another, and what's more important, we find out a great deal about each other's faith. We often have reflections, that is, days on which we, speak about our own faith, and suddenly we discover we've learned a lot more about ourselves. It's quite good, in the bargain. Not knowing enough about each other and our faith may lead to prejudice, and prejudice in turn may turn to suspicion and then escalate to hatred. Our aim is to nurture a harmonious borough with hugely diverse religious communities living peaceably together. Please join us. You never know, as a member of Harrow Interfaith, you might be here next year helping us with this event. Today we learn all over again about the terrible plight of the Jews, together with Romanis and people with disabilities. More than 6 million Jews sent to horrendous concentration camps and then tortured to death in gas chambers, as we know at Auschwitz. In the name of humanity, I passionately feel we owe it to their memory to take every possible step, like ambassadors, just as Lord Finkelstein said that we all should step out. It's our responsibility. And I heard the lady just before me speak on behalf of the Uyghurs so movingly. I'm really touched by what she said, that it's our responsibility, every single one of us, to stop these evil perpetrators in their dreaded tracks. It has to end. Harrow Interfaith invites you to become a member and play your part in ensuring and empowering Harrow and its people. We are the largest immigrant population, and we'd like to maintain its excellent reputation for communities living and working in harmony and peace. Thank you very much for coming here and for your valuable time. And for those of you at home, thank you for watching. Please spread the word, and I hope you will certainly look out and think very carefully about joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonu. Our next contribution is from Fahima Zahin. Fahima is a child of the war in Afghanistan. Before coming to the UK, she spent the first 20 years of her life in war-torn Kabul, where she was born. She's here tonight on behalf of Paiwand, an Afghan community organization which seeks to unite the Afghan refugee community in the UK. In fact, Paiwand means unity. Fahima, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much. I was quite touched to be invited because it tells me that the human quest for justice never ends. When I was a child, my mom would always tell me stories to put me to sleep. And those nights were not very good nights. We didn't have any electricity or light. I always used to hear screams of people who probably were robbed or killed in their own homes. And my mom would try to teach me that the good always wins, no matter how the bad is powerful. As I grew up, my experiences told me differently. Unfortunately, I was seeing that a lot of people were killed on daily basis. I would go to the top of our roof and I would see where the smoke comes from, and I would analyze how many people just died. I would just estimate that. As a child, I was suppressed to live in my home, not being able to go out. And the tragic thought that came to my mind was that actually it was the bad that was winning, not the good. The killings, the poverty, the violence, you name it. And then regardless of where you live, whether it's in a concentration camp or whether you live in a city that is hit by hundreds of deadly missiles every day, what you ask yourself is, who decides for me to live like this? Or better to say, who decides for me to die like this? Other question for me was that the last day of my life? Who pushes the button? And not being able to find an answer to this question made me feel so powerless. I was looking for that good that my mom always talked about. And then I became a refugee. And that status, that title of being a refugee, shaped my life for the rest of my being, probably. Because from what is happening in Afghanistan now, there is no hope for me right now to go back. And when I heard people here having a wish for a day that there is no war, no racism, no hatred, I found myself, all my life I wished the same thing. And I always go back and think about my mom's stories. And I realize that it's not about winning. It's about continuous battle of good and bad in this world. No matter how powerful the bad is, how rich the bad is, how greedy and ambitious the bad is, there's always people like yourselves, like the people who invited me here and the people who delivered these inspiring speeches. There's always good people. And we will continue our battle until we win. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you again, Fahima, for that, again, thought-provoking contribution. We are now reaching the end of our evening and the end of this year's commemoration of the Holocaust. So I'd now like to call upon Rabbi Ben Kurzer from Pinner United Synagogue with his thoughts, his closing thoughts maybe, of today. Rabbi Ben.
Thank you very much, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As I was walking along today in the sunshine, I was admiring the beauty of nature, the wonderful world that God has created around us for us to enjoy and to live in together. But unfortunately, Holocaust Memorial Day and episodes that continue to happen since then remind us that the beauty of human beings, perhaps the most significant creation of the Almighty, is something that people forget all too often. Just yesterday, we saw, of course, within our own Jewish community in Haringey, across London, another attack on the beauty of the human spirit. And we read in our synagogue and in synagogues across the world this coming week, this coming Shabbat, the portion of the Torah that deals with a famous passage, what has come to be known as an eye for an eye. In Hebrew, ayin tachat ayin. And our oral tradition teaches us that this was never intended to be taken literally, and that it simply refers to a financial payment. And Rabbi Soloveitchik puzzles if that is the case, then why doesn't the Torah speak a little bit more clearly? Why doesn't it tell us that the one should simply repay someone who they hurt? And he explains beautifully that the real lesson here is that hurting a human being is something you can never pay back financially. To maim an individual, to maim a person, is something that can never be undone. It harms the spark of God that is within each person, the Tselem Elokim. And that spark was, of course, implanted right back when the world was created on day one. In fact, the Torah refers to it as one day, Yom Echad. Not the first day, but one day. And the reason for that is because it was the day on which the presence of God was seen as one. One God, the entire world, acting with a unity of purpose. And we believe, of course, that one day in the future, that will return as well. By Yom Hahu, there will be one day when the world will return to a state where we will all be able to act with a unity of purpose, with a harmony, working towards a mission of all humanity, and a mission of the entire world. I'd like to conclude just by quoting from the late Chief Rabbi, Lord Jonathan Sacks, as follows. One day we will learn the lesson of peace, that war never solved any conflict in the long run, that in victory, the victor too was defeated, that in conquering others, we diminish ourselves, and that only in and through peace do we honor the image of God that is mankind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Kurza. Well, to wrap up this evening with some closing remarks, I'd now like to introduce Mr. Jack Lyons. Jack has been the chairman of this year's Harrow Holocaust Memorial Day event and very central to all the other contributions. So, Jack, a few words from you.
Good evening. My name is Jack Lyons, and I've been privileged as a member of Harrow Interfaith to be the chair of Harrow's Holocaust Memorial Day again this year. I want to thank everyone who this evening has told their story so movingly. Also those who have been our musicians and singer, our presenter, Steve Levinson, and a special thanks to Harrow Arts Centre and Matthew Wright of HAC for enabling our event to be streamed not to hundreds, but to over 1,000 homes. Next year, we must live in hope we will be able to be at our event physically together here, but we have to wait and see. Jews, who numbered about 525,000 in Germany, less than 1% of the total population in 1933 were the principal target of Nazi hatred. The Nazis identified Jews as a race and defined this race as inferior. They also spewed hate-mongering propaganda that unfairly blamed Jews for Germany's economic depression and the country's defeat in World War I. Right now, we appear to be heading for economic problems in this country, and we must guard against blaming any one section of our population. The message this year of HMD consists of just one word: today. The tomorrow becomes today, and I am confident that this evening's message will be for each one of us every today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Jack, and to everyone else who has contributed to this one day of commemoration and hope for a better tomorrow. I hope you'll agree with me, it's been a moving, thought-provoking, and indeed challenging evening. All of you, however, at home can take part, can show your support by, as I said before, lighting a candle at home in your window this evening, just to show that you are aware that today is Holocaust Memorial Day. Normally at this point in time, I would wish you all a safe journey home, but that seems a little bit superfluous today, in which case, all I will say to you is goodbye from this year, from all of us at the Harrow Arts Centre. Thank you again, and good night.